Here's a little shorty video for you Sunday morning. This is from Michael Snyder's website, the economiccollapseblog.com. And I remember back, 2010, 11, 12, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar. I remember all that stuff. How many of you guys or girls remember, I don't know the guy's name and his brother or whatever that created this, Time Wave Zero? Do you remember that? When him and his brother or whatever it was, they went out to, some tribal area and God knows where in the Amazon somewhere, and they learned something. They were doing some kind of, I don't know, I want to call it acid. It was something that the tribes people gave them, plant, whatever. Maybe it was some type of acid. They had a trip and all this knowledge came to them, and he went back home afterwards and created this Time Wave Zero thing. And remember, it zeroes out at, December 21st, 2012, and then that's it. So, Mayan calendar and all that, and doomsday. I remember checking all that stuff out. There was even a little program you could download and run it, and it was the Time Wave Zero program. And you could actually look out in the future to see the little, almost look like a stock chart going up and down and all this stuff. And I think even Cliff High used to look at some of that stuff, and it would sometimes tie in with his webbot, with time frames of certain things. But that's like gone. It's, no more news on the Time Wave Zero stuff. We've gone back to zero date. Now it starts over again or what? I mean, I don't even know. Just curious if any of you guys remember that stuff. But part of that was what? Doomsday stuff, end of the world, and, oceans are going to rise and shorelines are going to be destroyed, and, earthquakes across the planet. And I was, back in those days, I was getting any kind of DVD, documentary, and I would find some that were like, amateur documentaries, but they would go over to like South America somewhere, one of these countries, and they'd end up being with actual, descendants of the Mayan people. And they would have a little translator and stuff, and they would take them to these sacred spots, and they were talking about it. And I remember watching and thinking, all right, when's the big flood or doomsday? What do they got? What info do they got on that? And they never had any. It was always like, no, it's going to be more or less a big transition. And one of the things that I kept seeing once I kind of put all those puzzle pieces together to where I was, I guess, satisfied with not just that documentary, but just everything I got my hands on kind of a thing, was that those people knew big change was coming to humanity. Not necessarily doom and gloom, massive earthquakes, that sort of thing, even though we know those events do in fact happen. And they seem to be getting more and more, happening these days. But their thing was, like the old ways will be washed away. They must be washed away for the new ways to come in and take over. Like a better system will be coming, kind of a thing, generally speaking. But all the old stuff has to go away first, like a rebirthing, if you will. And again, look at all the exposure of these elites. I read more stuff a couple days ago on the pedophile stuff, Pedogate, California. It's like the second in charge or something, like a secondary kind of level district attorney, nailed with child pornography on his computer and whatnot, uploading, downloading pictures, nailed. And then I want you to think of how these same people, these are district attorneys, these are people that can go after you and the jury finds you not guilty, and they go after you again, have another trial, the jury finds you not guilty, they go after you a third time, finally got him, the jury found him guilty, throw him into jail for 10 years, prison. These are those people, not all, but I'm going to venture and say I wonder if most of them are, who are in charge, who get to sentence you. But having said all that, I still look at earth changes. I see what's happening, right? This island that just came up, off of, what was it, North Carolina or something, South Carolina, Bermuda Triangle thing, off the coast. Mile pops up out of nowhere with the, I covered that the other day when it happened. I'm also seeing the volcanic activity, earthquake activity, right? I pay attention to that stuff. And it's not getting any less, or it's not happening less. It's happening more, and it continues to. And I could say the same thing years ago, which means it ain't done yet. So do we have something to be concerned about, I guess is my question. Again, part of the reason of me, well, let me back up. I always wanted a house that had at least a little bit of land. If I could, worst case scenario, give me like a half an acre. Best case scenario, give me a bunch of acreage. What do I have here now? I have a few. I'm satisfied with that. There's water sources nearby. We're on groundwater, right? So this, back in my mind, all these years, I got to have this, I got to have that, that. And I finally got that. So I actually have a little bit of relief, that I didn't realize was, on my shoulder blades, carrying the weight. I didn't even recognize it was always there. I guess because I've been studying and reading all this stuff for so long. But now that I'm here in this house, and I feel like, oh, a good bit of weight's been lifted. I've got my well, I've got, a lake that's not too far away, fish, water, that sort of thing. And of course, you got your backup supplies, your food storage. Everyone has to have that, as I keep saying. But I still think we, at some point in time, Ed Dames, right? With the kill shot thing about the massive solar flare. I guess what happened the other day, like really recently, but Earth had already been out of its path and it went and hit Mars or something. And they were saying, what I read anyways, if that had hit Earth, what do you call it? Not an EMP, solar flare. What's the other word though? Not EMP, is it? Electromagnetic pulse. Maybe it is from a solar flare. But it could have been deadly, kind of a thing. You have to remember back, I think it was the mid to late 1800s, what they called the Carrington event, fried telegraph wires and stuff. That was a big solar flare that hit then. That was only the 1800s. It was not long ago. We barely had any kind of electricity, wiring, Imagine today. So, it's just something to think about. That's why I always talk about having your stash. And again, if everything went down, right, and we had to go, be brought back an age or two, you would definitely want some precious metals, some coin, right, to do some kind of bartering and stuff. You would want that. Which reminds me, of course, sdbullion.com/jsnip4. New customers, they are giving a 10-ounce silver bar at spot price. New customers only. It's in the link of my description box of every video I do. It's always down there, sdbullion.com/jsnip4. It's just something to think about, hey, might want a few coins, something to barter with should things go south. But anyways, let me go ahead with this article here. Scientists warn that the countdown to the extinction of the human race is accelerating. Humanity is steamrolling toward a date with extinction, and yet most people have absolutely no idea that this is happening. Most of us like to think that we are part of the smartest, tallest, and fastest generation in human history, but science has actually shown that the exact opposite is true. Compared to our ancient ancestors, we are shorter, slower, and we have been losing mental capacity for thousands of years. And just this week, a groundbreaking study that discovered that large numbers of human males in the Western world may soon be incapable of reproducing made headlines all over the planet, which I'm going to tell you what I think exactly how that's happening in a second. Humans could be extinct if sperm counts in men from North America, Europe, and Australia continue to fall at current rates, a doctor has warned. Interesting that it's only the Western world. Researchers assessing the results of nearly 200 separate studies say sperm counts among men from these areas seem to have halved in less than 40 years. So why do I think that's happened? I can give you easily why I think, of course, my opinion, but it is based on some scientific studies that have happened. So it's pretty solid. I remember seeing a study on rats where they fed them, and I don't know if it was GM, as in genetically modified corn or genetically modified wheat. I want to say it was corn, if I recall. Nonetheless, it was a genetically modified food. And the rats ate it. Mama rat, daddy rat had some babies. They ate it, etc., etc. They were fine. They reproduced. And it was like 2 to 3 generations down the line. So in other words, mom and dad had babies. The babies had babies. And then I think when those babies tried to have babies, there was major fertility problems. Major. And it only affected the rats which ate the genetically modified foods. So when you look at Monsanto, the king of genetically modified foods, you would look around and say, glyphosate and all this crap, this company should have been shut down by the federal government so fast it should make your head spin, or faster than you can shake a stick at it, much less lick it. But they haven't. Other countries are stomping out Monsanto. Get out of our land, don't ever come back. United States? Nope. These other countries? Nope. Why is that? Is it possible, I'm just asking the question, is it possible that the United States government understands massive population and wants its little population reduction agenda to go full force? So rather than, kill us off through war and famine and that sort of thing, let's just put it in the food that people eat. They'll never know it. And I would even venture and say that this might be such a high level type of thing if it's happening, which again, I think the proof is there that it is happening, that most congressmen, presidents, don't even have a clue. They're all eating it. We're all eating it, right? John McCain got brain cancer the other day. With all the kind of technology and, beneficial knowledge the elite have, how did that son of a gun get brain cancer, right? Well, he's 80-something years old. I know. But if you got technology and medicine that the rest of us don't have, how does that happen, right? Because I don't think he knows either. So I think that's the whole issue why Monsanto is still around and doing great, even though they're getting shut out of this country and that sort of thing. But at the same time, their weed killer I don't think has any damn thing to do with any kind of population agenda. So weed killer, glyphosate, you read the label on it, and now they have to, in California, they have to label it as a cancer-causing agent. This is all over the ground. It's on the grass. It gets into the groundwater. Ultimately, you drink it. Even if it's tiny little particles of it, you're going to drink it, etc. So we have a bunch of things attacking the human being and animals around us from all sources, all directions, from other humans, of course. Anyways, so that's what I think. That's why I'm saying I think I know what is causing the low sperm count. The 185 studies, the other thing about having a little bit of acreage, you can grow your own food. Now, I will tell people from experience, if you don't have acreage, you got a little small, tenth of an acre, eighth of an acre, like most of us have had all of our lives, including myself. And you could do hydroponic. Stacker gardening is one way to do it in a small space, and then they stack up. And I've actually grown lettuce and things so rapidly, and that thing, we picked a giant bowl of lettuce for dinner, part of our dinner one time, I remember, and I looked back at the plants, I'm like, did we even take any? We only had 3 of them up there at the top pots. And I had 20 different pots. I was only using 4 rows, which each had 4 stacked, or 4 or 5 stacked, so 4, I think it was 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20, and I'm talking in a 5-foot area by maybe, call it 2 feet total. You can find some space to grow stuff, you know what I mean? But if you have some land, you could plant the old style, whatever. But I'll be honest, I enjoyed hydroponic gardening than anything else because it's all there. You can put timers, you got a barrel of water feeding it, it's all timed, you know what I mean? It was just really easy to manage. The 185 studies that the researchers took their data from were all conducted between 1973 and 2011. Dr. Haggai Levine was one of the lead scientists involved in the study, and he found that for men in North America, Europe, and Australia, as well as New Zealand, sperm concentrations declined by 52.4% during the study period, and total sperm count declined by a whopping 59.3%. If these trends continue, we will soon have tens of millions of young men that are incapable of producing children. The following comes from the Washington Post. Almost threw up in my mouth a hair there. Washington Post. The most important data points in the new study involved sperm concentrations for what are known as unselected men who haven't yet proven they are fertile. These are men in the studies who are on the younger side and are not yet fathers or do not have partners who are pregnant. Researchers estimated that these men had an average sperm concentration of 99 million per milliliter. that was in 1973, but that had dropped to an average of 47 million per milliliter in 2011. And since 1968, I think, roughly, is when they started doing the genetically modified wheat. Just a little FYI, 1968, or let's just call it the 1960s, late 60s, I know that much. This is a disturbing number given that, according to the World Health Organization criteria, men with sperm concentration of less than 40 million are considered to have an impaired chance of conceiving, and those with a sperm concentration of less than 15 million per milliliter are unlikely to be able to have children. If that sounds extremely serious to you, that is because it is extremely serious. See, as I started to read this article, I was thinking, oh, he's going to talk about some kind of earthquake, volcanic activity, you know. No. This might even be much more serious. You can't reproduce, then what? And I bet their great global agenda was, once the population comes under control, we'll get rid of the genetically modified stuff. We'll go back to regular, you know, real organic foods. Let the population spread out a little bit more. Or certain parts of the world will have genetically modified, other parts won't. The elites, we're not going to have that stuff. So all you have to do is be smart enough to try to get as much organic stuff as you possibly can in your body. And I'm going to tell you something. You know, I can eat a sandwich just as good as the next guy. You know, give me a turkey, you know, turkey and ham sandwich, turkey sandwich by itself, both, whatever. And of course, all the sides, you know, whether it's pickles, lettuce, onions, spinach leaves, things like that. My wife's like, oh, let me make you a veggie sandwich. I'm like, veggie sandwich. She's like, you know, it's not really not that bad. You know, you put mayonnaise, mustard on it, and just like I do any other sandwich, a little salt and pepper, it's actually pretty good. She already had one, so I was like, all right, give me a bite of yours. We take a little bite of this veggie sandwich, ain't no freaking meat on it. Take a bite. Wait a minute. You almost can't tell. Like, if I had you close your eyes and said, hey, you know, whoever you are, whichever subscriber you want to play, take a bite of this, you know, turkey sandwich or ham sandwich. You would bite into it and eat it. Yeah, that doesn't taste too bad. I don't know that you would know right off the bat that there was no meat in there, other than the, you know, a little bit of the texture issue. You'd realize, where's that little texture? It was freaking good, and I got filled up on it pretty decently. She put, you know, just nothing but veggies, organic veggies. I thought to myself, man, I'd be eating a little bit more of that. Problem is, wifey doesn't want to make it to, oh, I got to cut up all the stuff. It takes too long. Evelyn, make your freaking husband a sandwich. Come on. Make your own self a sandwich. Oh, well, I guess I could do that too. But then I got to cut up all that stuff, man. I got my people waiting for me out in the Jason 4 shack. The man cave, whatever the hell we call this thing. They're waiting for me. I got to go do videos. Come on, don't you want to? It's for the people, Evelyn. Don't you want to give? Better to give than to receive. I've never said that to her in my life. I'm kidding. Although I did ask, you know, can you continually make some of these sandwiches throughout the week? I did ask that much, but we're super busy here. Still moving stuff around and upstairs. You know what? Let's put that stuff downstairs and put the stuff that was in that room downstairs back upstairs. Oh no, okay, yeah, that's good. Computers, we're downstairs. We got like 5 of them total for the kids, and we have a guest computer, like, you know, for a friend or someone comes over. Basically, my computer. We're a family of 5. We have 5, and then basically a 6th one. But you could say 5 of them are in there. My 6th one's out here. And we have this little tiny office space. It'd have been good for 1, maybe 2 people. And we're like, oh, we can kind of bunch. You guys can come bunch up in there. I'm thinking, man, you're gonna be hot as hell in a little tiny room. All right. So I was just moving that stuff a little while ago. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm not moving the desks. I'll wait for our friends to come over tomorrow, which they are Sunday. Get the other stuff. So anyways, it's all, you know, what's the old saying? You are what you eat. It's that simple, folks. Take care.